This is a short video to show you the absolute basic usage of DRBDmon. First, to start DRBDmon, you simply type DRBDmon and press enter, and that will always get you to the resource list in DRBDmon. The things you can see here are all the active resources on the current node. It does not show any inactive resources that might be configured in configuration files but have not been started. It also doesn't show any resources that are only running on other nodes in the same cluster. The resource column here shows you the resource name of each of the resources, and you have probably noticed that some of them are green and some of them are red. The green ones are considered to be in a good state as a whole, so all of the volumes that are supposed to be attached and up to date are attached and up to date. All of the connections that are supposed to be connected to peer nodes are connected. To the left of the resource name column is a role column, and that will show a hollow circle for secondary role and a filled circle for primary role on the current node. To the right of the resource name you have a volumes and a connection column and a quorum column. The volumes column is split into two fields. The left one shows how many volumes are considered to be in a good state, and the right one shows the total number of volumes. Same for the connection column, it works the same way. The left part of the field shows how many connections are in a good state, and the right part of the field shows how many total connections there are. The quorum column simply shows either a yes or a no, indicating whether the resource has quorum or not. You can switch to other pages using page down and page up, and you can also press the tab key, and that will give you a cursor indicated by the blue line, which is the cursor that you can move around using the arrow down and arrow up keys, and it also indicates that the cursor is active up here in this status bar. If you press tab again, that disables the cursor and you go back to simply monitoring what's going on. With the cursor enabled, you can navigate to whatever resource you want to know about a little bit more. So if you want to know details for one of the resources, for example a state test, let's go here, it's the red one, you can simply press enter and it will show you more details about this resource. And you can also go to the connections list and volume list for that resource from here by pressing the hotkeys indicated on the screen. So C as in Charlie for connections and V as in Victor for volumes. If I go to the connections list, for example, you get this kind of display where it still shows you the resource line as in the resource list, and it also shows you connection lines for each connection of that resource. And this works pretty much the same way as in the resource list. You see the connection name, the connection state, the number of peer volumes that are considered to be in a good state, and the total number of peer volumes that the current node can see on the peer. You can also activate a cursor here and navigate further, same way as on the resource list. For example, if you press enter here, you get more details about this connection, and then you could go to the peer volumes page from here one level further, and it would show you what the peer volumes are doing, and you can even navigate here. If you press function key 10, function 10, that gets you back to the previous display. And if you go all the way back to the resource list, again, if you go to the details from here, you press enter, then you can go to volumes, and for the volumes list you can also activate a cursor and navigate from here. Then you've probably seen that there are actions that you can run using the A key. So for example, volume actions, you can detach volumes by running action number 2, and then the same works for connections and resources, exactly the same way. There's also a faster way to navigate, and you can go to the connection list or volume list or to the resource actions directly from the resource list by pressing the same hotkeys, so A for actions, and you can go to the resource actions, C for connections, and you can go directly to the connections list, and V for volumes, and you can go directly to the volumes list. And that is pretty much it for basic usage of DRBDmon. To exit DRBDmon, you can press function 3 from anywhere, and that is pretty much it. Let's look at some of the other displays that are available in DRBDmon. There's a main menu, this one that you can reach by pressing function key 2. And from here you can go to various displays. You already know the first one, the resource overview, that's where we just came from. And then there is a message log, various task queues, and there's the help index, and an about DRBDmon page, and the DRBDmon configuration. So the message log, this is a log where DRBDmon logs any problems that might occur, such as DRBD setup sending events that do not make sense, or system running out of memory, stuff like that. Most of the time it will be empty. Whenever something goes wrong, you can find it here. Going back to the main menu, the task queues show you either active tasks that DRBDmon is running, and that happens whenever you run actions from DRBDmon. So for example, you select a number of resources or a number of volumes or connections and you run an action on them, that will create a task. While the task is running, it will be in the active task queue, and then the tasks that are pending and are not currently running but will be running in the future are in the pending tasks queue, and from there it could be moved into the suspended task queue, and obviously from the suspended task queue back to the pending task queue. And then any finished tasks are in the finished task queue. However, you might not find anything there because in the DRBDmon configuration, tasks can be discarded automatically once they have finished. So most of the time that will be empty. Help indexes, where you can find various help topics. For example, as I just told you about the task queues, all the details are in here. And from the main menu, if you go to DRBDmon configuration, that's where you can configure DRBDmon, and you can save the configuration and load the configuration if you have modified it temporarily, or you can reset everything to defaults. And this is where you can set various options in DRBDmon, how it should behave, what it should do, what kind of colors and character set you want to use. So those are pretty much all of the additional displays in DRBDmon. I hope that helps. On those terminals that support it, you can use mouse navigation in DRBDmon. Most of the things can be done using the mouse instead of the keyboard. For example, page up, page down, you can just use the scroll wheel to page up and page down. For navigation, like cursor navigation, you can simply click somewhere. Even if you're not in cursor navigation mode, you can just click on one of the resources and you will end up in cursor navigation mode. And from there you can go to the details page by right-clicking if the terminal supports it. So right-click is basically the same thing as pressing enter on the keyboard. And you can click on most of the hotkeys here and go to those pages. You can close a page up here with the X button. And this is how you can navigate through pages using the mouse. If you want to cancel cursor mode, you can simply click on page and you will go back to monitoring. And for running actions, obviously you can either run an action on a single resource, either by going to the details and selecting actions and running an action from here, or if you press A directly, obviously you can run the same action directly from here by clicking on the action. And you can also run actions on multiple volumes or resources, connections, whatever item you select, by clicking very far to the left of the resource line, or if you're on the volumes or connections page, obviously those lines. And then if you go to actions by pressing A, then you can run an action on all of those selected items, in this case resources. You cannot clear the selection using the mouse, so you have to press F4 here. You can deselect again by clicking on something that's already selected, but if you want to clear everything, you just press function key 4. That is only possible on the keyboard. And I hope that helps. It is possible to select multiple items in DRBDmon and run actions on them. And to do that, first of all, you have to be in cursor mode. So you press the tab key to go to cursor mode so you can navigate. And then using the space bar or space key, you can select items. And you can also deselect items that you, for example, selected by accident by going to a selected item and pressing space again. Now once you have selected items, you can go to the actions page by pressing the A key, A hotkey, and that will tell you that you have 4 selected resources that you can run actions on. For example, you can disconnect all of them. And if you stop a resource that is selected, it's important to know that it remains in the selection. So even though you can't see that it has been stopped unless you clear the selection, it is still selected. And if you run, for example, a start action on it or an adjust action, which basically does the same thing if it's stopped, then you will see that those resources will be started again. Another important thing is that if you have resources selected on the list display, it doesn't do anything to the resource under the cursor. So if the cursor is placed on file system 2 and I tell it to disconnect, for example, it only affects the selected items but not whatever is under the cursor. So it overrides the cursor. Let's go back to connect. And the same is true for details pages. If you go to some kind of details page, even on a selected resource like this one, then if you go to actions from here, it will only run the action on the resource that you were looking at on the details page. So this overrides the selection. If you want to run actions on multiple items, you have to be on a list display, not on a details display. Again, function 4 clears the selection, and obviously pressing tab again goes back to just monitoring and cancels cursor mode. Here's some more information about the warnings that DRBDmon gives you. And warnings and errors are those red and yellow triangles. The yellow hollow triangles are warnings, and warnings are typically issued for something that is not right on one of the peer nodes, and the local node can see that. In this case, if you navigate here to the connections, you can see that this connection has a warning, and the volume, the peer volume for that connection has an error. So if you go to the peer volume details, then what you can see is that the peer volume is this class and it shouldn't be, and that's why there's an error on the peer volume. So the error is on another node, but it is reported as a warning for the connection to that node on this local node here. A warning on a connection will always cause an error on the resource locally. Then up here you have errors for volumes and connections, and we can take a look at the connections here, and you can see that one connection is trying to connect but it can't because the peer does not work as it should, and the other one is set not to connect locally, which is an administrator action, or could be the result of a split brain, but is normally not the intended state, so that is reported as an error. For the volumes, same thing here. The volume is diskless. It should have a disk, that's why it's red. We can try to attach it, for example. If we do that, You can see it goes back to up to date. It does still not have quorum, so it still reports an error, but the state is good for the local volume now. So the reported error here is for not having quorum in this case. If you go to the connections, this one is disconnected locally, so we can connect that. And now we also have quorum, and the volume error is gone. There's also a problem mode in DRBDmon. So if you hit the P key, P as in Papa, then it will show you problems auto here, and it will limit the list display to only resources, or on the volumes page it would be volumes, and on the connections page it would be connections. Only those items that have some kind of warning or error, and it will not show you the ones that are working as they should. Problems auto means that it will automatically switch back to the list showing all resources if there are no resources that are degraded in some way, so none of them have errors or warnings. In that case it would just show all resources. You can press P again and it will go to problems lock, meaning it will only show resources that have problems or warnings, so errors or warnings. Even if there are none, then it will just say there are no resources that have any warnings or errors. And if you press P a third time, then it goes back to the normal display.